Hello, everyone. And this PowerPoint presentation is going to be on Domain 3, Reflecting on Teaching. And remember that Domain 4 is going to be supporting Domain 3, and Domain 3 is going to have a direct impact on Domain 2, which will be the next PowerPoint presentation, which you have for this week. All right, now, Domain 3 is divided into two levels. The first level that we're going to be looking at is evaluating personal performance. And a lot of you have already been starting to make comments on your discussion board about self-evaluation. And basically, self-evaluation is a component of deliberate practice. And what you're doing is you're reflecting back on Domain 1 specifically. And you are identifying your strengths and your weaknesses. And you can do this by looking at your classroom routines and procedures. A lot of you have been saying that you're not as organized as you would like to be, and that this is something that you are constantly working on and are continuing to work on. Then we have your strengths and weaknesses. Very often, first-year teachers are just a chapter or two ahead of their students. And as you start to get more comfortable and you start to get more years of experience underneath your belt, you can start really looking at particular subject areas, the curriculum, and then you can start adding your stories, you can start getting more resources, you're refining your labs, you're looking at how you're making your transitions, you're improving your assessments. So those are also strengths and weaknesses that you'll be looking at. And then student engagement. And a lot of you have been saying in your discussion board how important student engagement is, and how do you go about motivating students, and how do you go about building those personal relationships with your students. And these are all things that you can look at as well. And these will be things that we're going to be talking about as we go through the semester. Level 1 also is evaluating your lessons and your units. And basically what you're looking at is the data. And the question you're asking yourself is, did it increase student achievement? And definitely the end of unit summative assessment is the best way to see how well students did. But also we're going to be talking about formative assessments throughout the unit and different types of formative assessment that you can engage your students in to see if they're learning the material. And then by the time that they get to the unit test, the final exam, the midterm exam, you'll have a better idea, possibly even be able to predict how they're going to do on that exam. State assessments, those of you who are going to be teaching 8th grade, you have a state assessment. If you're going into the high school, you have a Regents exam. So you're going to be using the data to see for each student if they're making growth, but also from year to year, are your students getting better? And then you can use that back to reflect, is there an area that I need to particularly focus in on the coming September? Another great thing to do is notes to self. And I think I've talked to Jennifer and possibly Erica about this, but what went well? I always ask student teachers that I am working with is, what do they think went well with the lesson? What do they think did not work well? And if they had to teach it again, what would they change? So make notes to yourself. If you print a hard copy of your lesson plan or you keep your lesson plans on the computer, just go in, make yourself a text box, get yourself a Post-it note, what went well, what didn't go so well, and then any kind of ideas that you might have to make changes, because very often you have to move on to the next lesson that you're going to be teaching. So you can't sit down and rework the whole lesson. Very often you're not going to have a chance to do that until the following summer. And it's going to be really difficult, as I had said before, for you to remember, because a whole year has gone by. And this way, those notes will take you right back to where you were, and you'll know exactly what to zoom in on. Plus, by that time, you've also grown as a teacher. Other things have taken place, so then you can reflect back and make appropriate changes for the next year. Evaluating the effectiveness of specific strategies, you want to look at specific students that you had, what strategies did you use, and we'll be talking more about this as we go through domain 1 and we get into domain 2. But you have a student with an IEP, you have a student with a particular learning disability, you might have students with 504, you might be in a class which is a co-teach situation, and you're going to have regular ed kids in the classroom as well. So you can start to see what worked well, what didn't work well. If you or when you have this type of student with you again the following year, or maybe even into the next unit, what worked, what didn't work, what do you need in order to make changes. So that's all part of level 1 in domain 3. Level 2 is developing and implementing a professional growth plan. And you'll see as we're going through the introduction of the new APPR plan, and with specifically Marzano's model, if your district is going to be using Marzano's model, there is the domain 3 where you're going to have to submit some kind of a written growth plan. Not all districts are doing this, so you're going to have to check and see what your district is doing. But basically what you're doing is you're putting in writing what your goals for the year are. And even if your district does not require this, this is something that you should do for yourself, because once you commit it to paper, you're more likely to follow through. When you're just verbalizing it, when you're just thinking about it, it doesn't seem as real as if you have something in writing and you're constantly going back and you're looking at those goals. You're outlining how you expect to achieve those goals. I'm going to improve student engagement, and I'm going to take this workshop. I'm going to read this article. I'm going to talk to this particular colleague. So then you can see, well, have I done what I said that I was going to do, and how close am I in achieving this goal? And you gather evidence of your growth. So if your thing was to improve student engagement, do you have anecdotes of students that you've particularly worked with, that you've got them engaged in what it is that you're doing? What strategies did you use? What conversations did you have with the student? Did you have with the parent? Did you have with the guidance counselor? Did you have with other teachers? So just start thinking about this. This is level 2, and this is more formal, and this is something that you can actually have when you go to talk to your principal or your assistant principal or the director who's responsible for observing you. When you have those professional conversations with an administrator, you can share with them, well, this is what I'm working on this year, and this is what I've done, or this is what I'm going to do, or in April, I'm going to be going to this conference, so that your administrator also knows what's happening. So this is it for domain 3. It's a very quick one. When we go to domain 2, it's much more involved. You're going to see the closer that we get to the domains that directly affect student achievement, they're going to get more involved. So domain 4 is the other domain that we worked on this week. We now have domain 3. The last one that you need to look at, if you're going in this order, would be domain 2. But again, it didn't matter what order that you looked at these. So we will continue.